A notice of the meeting date changes being published in the local paper on Thursday, October 31st, 2019, to advise the public.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll ask for council to
Receive it.
receive it as information. Councilor Romero.
That council received the notification of moving the November 4th, 2019 regular council meeting to November 5th, 2019 as information.
Second. Councilor Ivey. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to you, City Manager, for 6.1.
Thank you, Worship, to present 6.1.2, rescheduling of public hearings for bylaw 22, 2019, 23, 2019, 24, 2019, 25, 2019, and bylaw 26, 2019. I'll ask Natasha Cowley to come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here to ask council to reschedule the identified public hearings. The public hearings were scheduled for today, October 28, 2019 at 2 p.m. for bylaw 22, 23, 24, and 25, and 26, 2019. The advertising for these noted bylaws were not published prior to the public hearing established for today and therefore did not meet the legislative requirements. These notices are now published in the local paper on October 24th and October 31st, allowing us to meet the legislative advertising requirements for a public hearing to take place on October 5th, 2019, during the regular council meeting at 2 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just curious, you said there was 2 dates that they were published on. So what are the 2 publications then? Because you said they were published on the 24th and also on the 21st?
24th of October and 31st,
Oh.
which will allow us to make the legislative requirement for November 5th.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction from council on 6.1.2, reschedule. Councilor Monroe.
That council approve the rescheduling of public hearing that were to occur at City Hall, council chambers during the regular council meeting on October 28, 2019 at 2 p.m. to the regular council meeting November 5th, 2019 at 2 p.m. City Hall council chambers for the following bylaws. Bylaw 22-2019 Eastwood Trailer Court Municipal Development Plan Amendment. Bylaw 23-2019 Eastwood Trailer Court Land Use Bylaw Amendment. Bylaw 24-2019-JNR Automotive 1397614 Alberta Limited Road Closure. Bylaw 25-2019 JNR Automotive 137614 Alberta Limited Municipal Development Plan Amendment. And Bylaw 26-2019 JNR Automotive 139614 Alberta Limited Land Use Bylaw Amendment.
Thank you. Councilor Dychak. Don't call for the question. I'll ask if there's any further questions. Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Natasha. Moving on to 6.1.3, City Manager.
Thank you, Worship, to present 6.1.3, Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement List of Lands in Arrears. I'll ask Kyle Sattler to come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, City Council.
Good afternoon, Kyle.
So the first one we'll start off with, the recommendation is that council approve the list of Saskatchewan lands in arrears as of October 15th, 2019, as presented, and that administration be authorized to proceed with enforcement in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act of Saskatchewan. Properties listed on the attached list will be subject to a tax lien registration by the end of January 2020 if the noted arrears have not been dealt with prior to the middle of January. Letters advising of these arrears were mailed in September 2019, and additional tax lien warning letters were mailed in October 2019 to all Saskatchewan property owners that had arrears greater than $100, advising that if arrears were not paid, further action would commence. Phone calls have also been made to the registered owners on title. The attached list of land in arrears gives details of the 115 properties that have tax arrears as of October 15th, 2019. As of this morning, that list is down to 95 properties. This list is required to be advertised in a local newspaper as well as posted in the treasurer's office and at a public place at City Hall at least 60 calendar days before the tax liens are registered. If the arrears amounts are not paid by January 15th, 2020, these properties will have a tax lien registered on title. This list does not include Saskatchewan properties that already have a tax lien registered. And administration is continuing to work with the property owners and mortgagees to get the tax arrears paid prior to having to register the tax liens. So the options here are that council approve the list of Saskatchewan lands in arrears as of October 15th, 2019 as presented, and that administration be authorized to proceed with enforcement in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act of Saskatchewan. This will enable administration to meet the legislative requirement to advertise the list in a local paper 60 days prior to registering the tax liens. Option 2 is that council not approve the list of Saskatchewan lands in arrears as of October 15th, 2019, and that administration not be authorized to proceed with enforcement in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act of Saskatchewan. This option may limit the amount of time administration has to meet the legislative requirement to advertise the list in the local paper 60 days prior to registering the tax liens. And option 3 is that council requests further information from administration. This option will provide council with additional information prior to the request going to the next city council meeting for decision, but may limit the amount of time administration has to meet that legislative requirement. So if there's any questions?
Thank you, Kyle. Questions or comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Just as a note, what are you seeing from a year ago to now? What's the differences in this list? Bigger, smaller, same, average?
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Buckingham. So last year, so we've got 115 as of October 15th. Last year at the same point, there was 124. So we are a bit smaller, and we've just been continuing to work with those taxpayers to get them caught up.
You said that list is now down to 95?
Not on to 95 yet.
Good, thank you.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this question is kind of in the same line. So one of the things I noticed is that you said that any property that already had a lien on it is not included in this list. So there could be other properties that have 2019 and 2018 tax arrears owing, but are not included in this list because they were already registered in the prior year?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Thorson. Those will be on, in another 2 items, we'll be discussing those
Those
items.
specific ones.
Yeah, they'll be going for further tax enforcement.
Just making sure that, in terms of comparing year over year, well, there's a handful that get pulled from this list and get added to a different list that are still part of the same issue. It just maybe those properties have had the problem for longer, have had difficulty paying the taxes for longer. Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. Thank you.
And I'll just add one thing there, that out of those 124 from last October, only 9 were actually registered. So we expect this list to be significantly smaller by the time we actually have to register.
Kyle, just, you mentioned it in the background, and I just want to make sure people understand that we simply, if we mailed notices, if mail was returned, you have talked to people by phone, so if for some reason they've moved or the mail system didn't work perfectly, because that's how we deliver tax notices, that they do know, and we won't have a breakdown of communications, I would understand.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that is correct. We have actually contacted everybody on this list, whether we've got mail returned or not. We've sent letters, we've made phone calls, and in another couple of weeks, we'll make another round of phone calls to anyone that remains on the list.
So we've had good communication with the people that are on time.
Yeah.
Excellent. I guess the last one, I heard you, and I appreciate it's now from 115 to 95 properties. Do we need to have, as council said, ask to approve a revised list rather than this list? Because this list, I believe, is the 115, or is this the 195? It's just a matter of wording to make sure that we're still consistent.
Yeah, so the actual list that will be advertised will just be the list of properties that are remaining. So we have the advertisement scheduled for November 14th. And so we're just asking for approval of the list, and whatever's left actually on the list on November 15th is what will be advertised.
Terrific. Excellent. Any other comments or questions? With that, I'll look for direction from council on 6.1.3, Saskatchewan tax enforcement. Councilor Fagin.
That council approved the list of Saskatchewan lands in arrears as of October 15th, 2019, as presented, and that the administration be authorized to proceed with enforcement in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act of Saskatchewan. This will enable administration to meet the legislated requirement to advertise the list in a local paper 60 days prior to registering the tax liens.
Seconder? Councilor Buckingham. Any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Kyle. I believe you're here again for one or two reports. Please carry on.
Okay, so this next item, the recommendation is the council not approve tax enforcement proceedings to be initiated against Saskatchewan properties with less than $100 in tax arrears. As outlined in the attached report, Saskatchewan properties less than $100 tax arrears. Properties listed on this list will not be the costs of proceeding with tax enforcement due to the minor balances remaining in arrears. The City of Lloydminster currently has 22 Saskatchewan properties with 2018 tax arrears of less than $100. This list is actually now down to 20 as of this morning. These amounts are for taxes and penalties that have not been paid by the owner with the last payment that was received. Future tax payments will be applied to the oldest balance outstanding first, and it is expected that these arrears will be paid by the property owners with the remaining 2019 property tax payments. Article 3.3 of the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act gives council the authority to direct the treasurer not to include in the list land in respect to which the amount of taxes in arrears does not exceed 1/2 of the immediately preceding tax years levied with respect to that land. This clause gives council the authority to exclude specific property from the tax enforcement procedure if they wish. Administration continues to work with the property owners and mortgagees to get the tax arrears paid. So option 1 is the council not approve tax enforcement proceedings to be initiated against Saskatchewan properties with less than $100 of tax arrears as outlined in the attached report. This option will avoid additional costs associated with proceeding with tax enforcement on these minor balances remaining in arrears. Option 2 is the council approve tax enforcement proceedings to be initiated against Saskatchewan properties with less than $100 of tax arrears as outlined in the attached report. This may result in additional costs associated with proceeding with tax enforcement on these balances. And option 3 is that council requests further information from administration. This option will provide council with additional information prior to the request going to the next city council meeting for a decision. If there's any questions on this item?
Thank you, Kyle. Questions, comments? Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just had a question about some specific ones. So as we say, we apply any payments received to the oldest balances outstanding. I'm just curious on the really small ones that are in there, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because they all are really small, but I'm curious, are those, very small properties like a parking space type of thing where there's not a significant amount and it just wasn't paid from year to year? Or it wasn't, just to make sure that we're not applying payments that were received for the 2019 year and not applying them to the 2018 year that's in arrears?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Torreson. Yes, there are 2 properties on there that are parking stalls. So the annual taxes are less than $60, so that's why the 2019 also shows a small balance.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, I guess. So then with these ones, because there's not the same kind of, we'll say, incentive or pressure, we're trying to incentivize payment on these ones where there's this existing balance, just using purely our interest and penalties over the course of a year, and then follow-up phone calls and letters, and that's about it. We don't go the extra steps of registering liens because financially it doesn't make sense for us.
That's correct, yes. There's a fair bit of time that goes into the lien registration process, and we're just looking to avoid that cost on these particular properties.
Thank you.
Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Richard. So this is a yearly housekeeping item to summarize it, basically. How did we make out on this list last year? When we had, because we did this a year ago, where we had X amount of properties that were 100 or less. How was our enforcement rate on those?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Buckingham. So last year, there were the same number of properties on the list. When they went and paid their arrears, or their current taxes last year, they ended up paying their arrears first. So they're not on our tax lien list. They now have the current year taxes owed.
We have a fairly strong success rate in getting these smaller items cleared up without too much trouble in the long run.
Yes, that's
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Baker.
I'm just not sure, in the history, we used to just leave them sitting, but we never collected them. And sooner or later, somebody will want to do something with that property, and then we collected it. I'll just leave that with you.
Thank you, Councilor
It's like
Baker.
your water bill. Never goes away.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Baker. So if these property owners were to not pay their taxes next year, they would end up on the list of land in arrears, because then they'd have an arrears balance of over $100. So at that time, they would go for a tax lien if they still didn't pay those tax arrears.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. The only thing that's not true with that statement is these really small ones like the parking stalls, because they would forever be on the under $100, which to me makes me question, whether or not the penalty system really even does anything to incentivize someone to pay their taxes on their parking stall.
Thank you, Councilor Torres. And actually, they would end up on the arrears list, because if they didn't pay their 2019 taxes, so if their taxes are $60 a year, that's now $120 of arrears by next year.
Okay, fair enough. It would get there after
Yes.
3 years.
Yeah,
Thanks.
A little bit of catch-up.
yeah.
There's no further questions. I'll look to council for direction on 6.1.4 Saskatchewan tax enforcement number 100. Councilor Buckingham.
Move that council not approve tax enforcement proceedings to be initiated against Saskatchewan properties with less than $100 of tax arrears as outlined in the attached report. Saskatchewan properties less than $100 tax arrears.
Seconder, Councilor Diachuk. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for bringing that to attention. I think administration appreciates that, looking at costs, and that, from that perspective, being cost neutral or cost beneficial to the taxpayers. $100 seems to be a reasonable amount. Moving on to 6.1.5. Back to you, Kyle.
Okay, so the recommendation is the council authorize administration to initiate steps to proceed to apply for title under the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act for the following Saskatchewan properties. There's lots 5 and 6, block 8, plan B 1127, block 49, plan BW 857, block 4, block 2, plan 99B 14502, block part of 10 and 11, block 3, plan C 298, block 19, block 4, plan ADB 00296, and block C, plan 63B 09367. So administration requires council's authorization in accordance with subsection 22(1) of the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act to initiate proceedings to apply for title on any Saskatchewan property that has had a tax lien registered for more than 6 months. The City of Lloydminster currently has 6 Saskatchewan properties remaining that had liens submitted in January of 2019. Administration has attempted to make contact with all 6 property owners as well as their mortgagees and continues to work with the owners to make arrangements for payment. Unless arrears are cleared up, administration would like to proceed with enforcement procedures. Saskatchewan legislation states that 6 months after the tax lien has been registered, the council may authorize the treasurer by resolution to start proceeding for the title. A letter has been sent to the property owners in October 2019, advising them the tax lien has been registered, and if arrears are not paid in full, the City of Lloydminster will be commencing tax enforcement procedures. Upon council's authorization, the next step is to send a 6-month notice, which advises the property owner and all other interests registered on title that if tax arrears are not paid in full within 6 months, the city intends to apply to be registered as the owner of the property. After the expiration of the 6-month notice, the city must apply to the Provincial Mediation Board for permission to make final application for title. Once the board's consent has been registered against the title, the city must send out a 30-day final notice to all interests registered on title. If the arrears and costs remain unpaid after the expiration of the 30 days, the city may apply to transfer title into the city's name. The city must then offer the property for sale within 1 year of taking title. In the past, the city has never had to proceed to the step of applying for title, and administration anticipates that the arrears will be paid prior to this step because administration continues to work with the property owners. So option 1 is the council authorize administration to initiate steps to proceed to apply for title under the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act for the 6 Saskatchewan properties listed that remain in arrears after lien registration. This option will allow administration to take steps to collect the remaining tax arrears if necessary. Option 2 is the council not authorize administration to initiate steps to proceed to apply for title under the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act for the 6 Saskatchewan properties listed that remain in arrears after lien registration. This option would not allow administration to take further steps to collect the remaining tax arrears if necessary. And the council requests further information from administration. This option will provide council with additional information prior to the request going to the next city council meeting for decision. Any questions?
Thank you, Kyle. Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question about one of the properties on there. Because I was just looking at the amounts and, you know, if we're applying the most recent payment to the first installment, I'm just trying to gather how the one is so much from 2017, and so would that include in 2017 and prior, as though they were prior years? I'm just worried that there may be some kind of, you know, error, because to me it doesn't make a lot of sense if it's approximately in the $5,000 a year value or $7,300 in that year, and then $22,000 that other year, even with a bunch of penalties. I don't understand how it can climb to that high of a percentage greater.
Thank you, Councillor Torreson. So that particular property had several unpaid utility bills transferred to the property in 2017. Those utility bills form part of the arrears, and that's why that balance is much larger in that year.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's kind of the explanation that I guess would explain it, so thank you very much. The only other thing I had to say is just that, you know, this is a housekeeping item that we've had to deal with these a couple of years, and I'm happy to know that we've never had to actually go to the point of having the public auction and everything else, and I'm really hoping that this year is the same as all those others, that we find a way to work with those taxpayers to find a way to get this paid up and cleared out of payment plans, because we do this because we want to provide and improve quality of life in the community and not to take people's homes away. So everyone needs to pay their fair share. We have to make sure they're applying the rules fairly to everyone, but at the same time, there's no worse feeling than perhaps having to do this to someone in your community. So thank you for the information.
Thank you. I'll just mention one further comment, is that I have spoken with 3 of these property owners already who anticipate to have all their arrears paid by December 31st. There's 2 owners that I haven't been able to get a hold of yet, but we have sent them letters and we're waiting to hear back from them. So.
Thank you.
Councilor Batchor.
Thanks, Your Worship. Kyle, how much time does it take to deal with each of these? Because I'm just thinking about the amount of time you invest into this and we do as a city.
It does take a substantial amount of time because we do have to pull title, find out who's all registered on title. We're contacting not only the property owners, but mortgage holders. As far as a specific amount of time, I mean, over the course of from the lien being registered to actually sending out these 6-month notices, it could take a couple of hours per property just in the preparation of everything.
I'm just seeing that if you multiply that by the number of properties, then it's probably a little more than a couple hours, but all of a sudden it adds up to a couple of weeks of your time over the course of a full year. And yeah, thank you.
Councilor Baker.
In a nutshell, Your Worship, aren't we required by law to go through this process? We have no choice. That's the part that's, it says we need council's approval, but at the same time, the government and legislature, you must do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're telling us, or why we even do this. Why don't we just don't go ahead and do it? Because the province is dictating it. If I understand the law right.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Yes, the legislation does require us to take it to council for approval. I think it's just that extra step.
Yeah. But let's be honest, does it make any sense? When they're saying you gotta do it that way, if you're gonna follow the law, you just go and do it. So to debate it and say we will or we won't, what if we said we won't do that? Just a waste of the time.
That's a good question, Councilor.
I probably asked that question 10 times before.
No, I guess that sooner or later, someone from government relations in Saskatchewan would come and ask us why we want government grants if we're not prepared to collect the taxes that are due in our community. So that would be the first response I would expect. And you're right, and it's the challenge, and I guess it's, there's discussions about removing red tape. Is this a red tape issue? But it is a process that we've went through this council, so I believe it's our third time.
But Your Worship, it's never made any sense to me, ever.
That's a good one to take back, Councilor. Maybe we need to take that one off the table and come back and visit with our friends at SUMA and ask the question. We're not the only municipality that goes through this, I'm sure. And I'm sure our rural neighbors have the same issues, so it's just time spent. Maybe we can figure a better way, a better mousetrap, as they say.
Something.
Indeed. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I'll ask look for council's direction on 6.1.5. Councilor Torson.
I move that council authorize administration to initiate steps to proceed to apply for a title under the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act for the 6 Saskatchewan properties listed that remain in arrears after lien registration. This,
I think I need to.
Am I reading it wrong? Sorry.
You're actually taking it off this one.
Okay. Oh, I got complicated stuff.
Okay.
I move that council authorize administration to initiate steps to proceed to apply for title under the Saskatchewan Tax Enforcement Act for the following Saskatchewan properties. Lot 5-6, Block 8, Plan B1127, Block 49, Plan BW857, Lot 4, Block 2, Plan 99B14502, Lot PT 10-11, Block 3, Plan C298, Lot 19, Block 4, Plan 80B00296, Block C, Plan 63909367.
Thank you, Councilor. Seconder? Councilor Diachuk? Any further comments or discussion before calling for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Kyle. I think you, again, keep up the great work. I know that you give the Public Relations Department a real hands up because you talk to a lot of ratepayers on a regular basis. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council.
Thanks, Kyle.
Moving on to agenda item 6.1.6. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 6.1.6, council remuneration policy, Chelsea Legacy.
you, Chelsea.
I'm here to bring back the council remuneration policy. Administration's made a few changes. Originally, it was brought forward to the October 7th council meeting, and council had requested some further information and changes. Administration has made a couple adjustments. We're actually requesting that the policy now come into effect immediately after the election in November of 2020. Administration's reasoning for that is after further review of numbers, the financial impact is only approximately $2,000. Aside from that, on the last page of the report, we added in some numbers for council's information, just to view some comparisons from 2019 to 2021. Our options are that council approved policy 120-03, the council remuneration policy, that council approved policy 120-03 with amendments, or that council recommend changes to the council remuneration policy and that it come back to future council meeting for decision.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. In anticipation, probably a few questions that might come forward from council. If council looks at the appendix E, they'll note that councilor salaries appear to rise more than the 2% the current administration had mentioned. What we've done is we've taken from the per diem, the GPC, and moved it to the base salaries of the council, which makes the 38,882. The total change to the council's salary is the 2% of the $700 that we indicated to council previously. Just so council understands that really what we've done is we've taken the GPC and made it part of the base salary for council. If that makes any sense.
Questions or comments? So I think the one thing, Councilor Batchor.
Yeah, for sure. Just add, I think that there's a fair amount of work that's gone into this, and I guess I want to just extend my appreciation for the efforts and the individuals that are involved in doing all the numbers and the crunching, whatever it is. And I think it's important to really highlight in all of these numbers that there's certainly a degree of objectivity and also connectivity to other civil servants who serve across both Alberta and Saskatchewan. And I think there's a level of comfort in how this policy's been drafted and put together this way.
Words well said. City Clerk.
If I may also add, we received no further comment from the committee. From the previous council meeting, there was no major changes to the policy except for the minor ones that Ms. Legacy had mentioned.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Apparently I missed this when I was reviewing it on the weekend, so there's a final page that was on this that I didn't see before, Appendix E, and I think that really that one is the real story of what's happening here. Everything else explains how the committee got there, which was, looking at minister salaries and everything like that. And I think, it was a pretty well unbiased approach to get there. But the final page, Appendix E, really tells the full story that this isn't meant to be necessarily a true increase or anything like that. It's meant to be a more systematic way in actually acknowledging that there's been a change in workload over the last 4 years, and it's expected to be a different workload for anyone who's running in the next election. That when we were first elected, GPC meetings didn't exist, not in the format that they are now. Now they're a scheduled every month meeting, and it's an additional commitment that you have to take outside of your work, family, and life schedule. So this is just really a better reflection of the standard of work that goes into doing, this job now, is the way I see the numbers moving around. Slightly different amounts of money, but a lot of that has to do with simple things like IT allocations, from what I see in it, and I think that we're taking the right approach as far as the IT component comes into this. So, at the end of the day, councillors' remuneration after the next election to me looks fair based on the amount of work. There's no substantial increase that are coming in a downturn or anything like that. And really, it's just a better reflection of the number of meetings that you're actually attending in a year and making that adjustment to the overall base salary rather than making it a per diem based system, which I don't think is as transparent as this is. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much. I think this document's done very well. And every time this is upgraded, it's been improved more and more for transparency. I felt for many years it was never that untransparent. It was pretty straightforward. But I think as time goes on, things get a little more complicated with how we do things. But what's important at the end of the day, that this document, whatever it's going to end up being, is being posted a year ahead of the next election. And what's important is that every individual in this community that meets the criteria, that sets out what the qualifications are to run, knows exactly what they would get reimbursed if they do become a council member, and have time to ask questions. And the big thing is ask questions, in my mind. Because it doesn't matter how you write this, it can be slightly confusing to even us, people that sit here at the table. You know, when you talk per diems and what qualifies and what doesn't, and people don't know what this kind of meeting is and that kind of meeting is. Well, you know, sometimes, quite frankly, I've been around a long time. Sometimes I'm not sure what they are, and I go and ask the chief administrator, is this a meeting we're supposed to charge for or not? And I understand that. But what's important, and really important, that people know it's posted, and they can question it. If they're not happy with what they see, they can talk to the authorities at City Council. And that this document was produced by residents of the city, not by City Council. We're obliged by law to approve whatever the next council remuneration package is going to be, I believe. We're required by law.
We're actually required, Councilor, if I can just add to our own salaries, that's the challenge. Our own salaries today are the responsibility of this council.
Right, but just so that, I'm just saying this so that everybody knows. It was like the motion we passed before. We really have no choice. It's our job to pass something. Our choice is we work for nothing and we get paid. We can do that, but beyond that, it's still something we have to improve. And there's something wrong with that too, in my mind. That I would prefer as a long-term council member that somebody else was setting the salary and I had nothing to do with it. But I have obligations according to the law. So we have to follow the law. It's that simple. And everybody has their own thoughts on that. That's my thought. But what's important for those that are going to be here for the next go round, whether 7 new people or 2 new people or whatever, everybody will know exactly where they're at. And I think this is fair and equitable. When you look across the provinces, what people are getting paid to do jobs with cities of similar size, and then we have this dual responsibility, but particularly for city manager. The city manager and his senior staff is dealing with 2 levels of government on issues all the time. That increases the workload. So I feel that I can freely speak about this because I've seen it happen. And I think it's just and well put together, and I would recommend that we accept what's put on the table today. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Councilor. Any other comments? Councilor Baker, I'll look back to you if you want to make that a formal motion for this, as you just outlined.
I haven't got it in front of me.
Okay, no problem.
I'm like Jonathan. Go ahead. You read it.
Councilor Buckingham.
Well, I'll do it.
Okay, there you go.
The council approved policy 120-03, the council remuneration policy.
Seconder? Councilor Fagin. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much, Chelsea, for working with council. I know we went through this in a few different revisions. Thank you very much for that effort.
Thank you.
Appreciate the effort you put into it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I can say the city clerk and I did receive requests of our policy. The latest draft before this was finally approved just recently in a meeting in Saskatchewan, where other municipalities are liking the format that we've suggested through the process that's come forward. And you'll see similar types coming out in Saskatchewan for sure, if not in Alberta as well. Moving on to 6.3, according to the agenda, City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. To present 6.3.1, Policy 134-05, the investment policy, I'll ask the Chief Financial Officer, Denise McDonald, to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
Before you use a new investment policy, it was taken to the GPC meeting October 21st, and we made some changes that were suggested by council. That being said, the investment policy is based around capital preservation. It's important that we ensure that our principal is protected as much as we can, so we put in the 2 items: guaranteed or backed by financial institution and a maximum term of 5 years. We also are ensuring that we're looking at local investments by local financial institutions or their agent that they've designated. And the third item that we're looking for in the policy is that, and this is the one that we were asked to give clarification on, and so we've changed it to say at any given time the total investment at any one financial institution cannot accumulate to over 60% of the reserve balance stated in the prior year's audited financial statements. So hopefully that is clear. And that being said, that this policy will be applied to any new investments. So the investments we currently have in our books, we will not be cashing in order to make sure they're compliant with this rule.
Thank you, CFO. Questions or comments? Councilor Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased to have this coming before us today. You know, within our strategic plan, we had said that a full suite of financial policies was something that was important within our term to complete, and this is just one more, you know, to add on to all the kind of accomplishments we have to date. When we look at some of the reserve policies we've done to date, this really puts a little more direction even into those to say, okay, we're going to keep reserves. Some of them are going to be short-term, some of them are going to be long-term. What are we going to do with that money that ensures that we're getting maximum value for the ratepayers for any monies that we have saved and put aside for special projects? And how are we ensuring that that money is protected and we're not going to lose any of the principal from it? Especially if we're getting funds from government grants as well from other levels of government. They want to ensure that if we have a multi-year project, that those funds are protected and safe, but also gives us an ability to grow those investments slightly if we have the right kind of timeline to go with them. So at the end of the day, I think it's a great policy, and I think it does everything we need it to do. And I'm just happy to see it come through, and that we are continuing on with our overall goal of having a full suite of financial policies that accomplish the city's goals and needs. So thank you.
Mr. Dutcher.
Thanks, Worship. I think just add one simple thing too, as well as that sort of in grabbing everything that Jonathan said, I would agree, and I think it's in the end, in a marketplace where the funds we're getting are diminishing, the expectation upon us to make the most upon what we have becomes even that much more important. And I think this policy goes a long way to really achieve that goal. So I think it's spot on.
Thank you.
I appreciate, CFO, your comment how it's been adjusted, because you indicated we're not going to go back and cancel the investments we've worked very hard at to get to the policy from the risk perspective, and I appreciate that. I think setting it going forward is the right thing to do, because you were able to secure some great returns on the investments we've been able to make in the last little while. I think that having this policy as the guiding document, following it going forward with the ensuring that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket, I think is the intention, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much for that. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I'll look for direction or recommendation on the investment policy. Councilor Fagan.
that council approve policy number 134-05, investment policy for all new investment.
Seconder? Councilor Belcher? I'll call. Is there any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 6.3.2. City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. To present 6.3.2 financial statements for the month ended September 30th, 2019. I'll ask Denise Hall to present those evening.
Council. We have our third quarter financial statements in front of you. So the very first item on there that I'd like to highlight on the balance sheet is, of course, the investments. The short-term investments, the rate ranges from 2.67% to 3.38%, and we're averaging 2.93% on our short terms. For our long-term investments, our range is 2.21% to 3.98%, and we're averaging 3.16%. So you can see that we're doing well on our investments there. Trade and other receivables, those numbers include 1.3 million in ARs and 2.1 million in utilities. Also, 1 million is interest earned but not yet received, is posted to trade and other receivables. The other item on there is accounts payable and accrued liabilities. That includes 11.8 paid to the schools in the month of July, so you can see that it decreased from June to September quite substantially, and that's due to the school requisition. Deferred revenue includes MSI of 2.9 mil and 2.6 of Alberta Community Resiliency Grant. Is sitting in deferred revenue, and it likely will stay there till the end of the year until the capital projects are related to are expanded, and it'll be moved over to the income side, so you'll see that when we get to the income statement. Prepaid expenses, that 334,000 includes 120 of P cards and 266 of, approximately 266 of IT software licensing requirements. The last one on this page that I'd like to highlight is the unrestricted reserves. You can see that they're up slightly from the previous year's balance, and that's due to 11.2 transfers for reserves in the current year that was posted in second quarter. So the next page is the income statement by function. You'll see our net municipal taxes posted there. And we're slightly under. We still have supplementary taxes to be posted in the month of October. So that should go up slightly and get us into a positive, meet our budget and then some. Penalties and cost of taxes is sitting at 53%. Our fine revenue for RCMP bylaw and photo radar is lower than anticipated. Sometimes those fines take some time to collect. They go on the individual's driver's license, and it could take at times up to 3 years to collect those revenues. So it's hopeful that we will collect it over time. Franchise and concession fees are sitting at 66% because payments are 1 month delayed. Transfer from reserves, you'll see that there's no item posted there. That $5 million is internal rent that has not been yet allocated. We will look at it at the end of the year, and you'll see that in 2020, when we look at the proposed budget, we will handle it a little differently. It won't show up as revenue, but will be handled within expenses, so it's in there. Salaries are sitting at below budget, modestly below budget at 69%. Contracted services and goods and materials, those are our typically are the bulk of our expenses are posted to those two items. Currently we're under budget. However, by the end of the fourth quarter, when we get all our invoices in for all the work that we've done throughout the year, you'll see that that should come up to budget. Bank charges are sitting at 62%, so it's nice to see that's below budget at this time. So the next income statement is by department. So you can see that general government, that's the bulk of our administration expenses are posted there. So that includes council, ledge services, finance, IT, ELT, communications, employee relations, safety, property taxes, and citywide legal. So that's a big bulk of our revenues and expenses that are coded to that area. Right now, we're sitting at 85%, and of course, property taxes is probably the majority of that, and it's posted one time a year, so it's understandable that it's higher than 75%. Environmental services, that would include road, air, storm, and it is sitting at 88%. And environmental services would include water, wastewater, solid waste, and landfill, and it's sitting in a good position at 73%. Planning and development would include the permits, but it also includes land development, and so it's under budget due to land sales. General government expenses, again, that's our big bulk item, and typically it would have insurance where we have one-time payment for insurance, and so that kind of tips your percentage a little bit. Transportation services are sitting at 48%, and that generally they are subject to weather conditions, and so fourth quarter we could have some weather issues that will cause those expenses to go up. And then the last item on there is our capital budget. We have 199 capital projects for 2019. 64 of them are complete, 104 in progress, and 31 not started. And then there's a list of detailed capital items. You will notice as you go through them that there's a few of them that say the project is complete, but the expenses are not yet in yet. So we've indicated that it's complete, but we're working on paying out the costs. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, CFO. Questions or comments? I'm not sure if this should be directly to CFO or to the city manager, but 31 projects not started to date at this time, will they still be scheduled to be completed by the end of December?
Based on the list, I would say a chunk of them are slated or have started in quarter four, I'm going to call it. There are a handful that will not be started due to a number of reasons that haven't started. But there will be some carryover into the new year in terms of completion of some of the projects. And I don't know them all off my head, but there will be some carry forward. But in terms of starting it, we're very happy with the project started to date compared to previous years, and I think our team has done a good job of setting that as a priority. But there are some projects that didn't get off the ground for a few reasons, and we'll see those set here out for sure.
Absolutely. I believe stormwater is always one of them that challenged us with that.
And some of them will just get started in quarter four as an example of that storm project for sure.
Thank you. Councilor Baker and Councilor Torson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through Denise. Now, when you overlook the overall budget, do you see any black holes? Like the rollover is good. In fact, that's always going to happen. Year end, it happens every year on 31st of December, and the work keeps working. But do you see any black holes on the revenue or expenditure side? Like anything of
Thank you for the
major.
question, but I clarify
Well,
it for me.
Where we're way over or way under on revenues or on capital expenditures? Any projects that, I mean, I know of a few that we've dealt with, but is there anything that we don't know yet that you see as, or administration sees as being a problem down the road here before the year end? Is there any major items outstanding that you could?
Other than the ones that I've already indicated in the quarterly statements, you do have a list of all the capital items that say which ones are over
Right, that's today.
to date.
But I just wondered if you could foresee any black holes or, no, that's what I want to hear. Yeah, no, that's what I want to hear. That's
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah, further to that, I would suggest anything that we've seen as a concern, unless something I'm not aware of to date, has been brought forth to council for the additional funding required. Not to say there won't be another one or two before the end of the year, but anything that we're aware of to date has been brought to council for that approval process.
Well, thank you, Rich. I think it's important that, well, we should know, and I think I do, but it's important that everybody sees where we're at and know that we have no big things hiding around the corner, if you want to put it that way. Thank you very much, that's good.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Torres?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to be clear on kind of the carryover from the project list, so the items that will not be started this year, and we don't expect to start them, so it's not a matter of timing of when this report came out, will those be included in the 2020 budget, included as a line item for decision, or because of the fact that they've already been agreed to upon this budget, they will, simply be included as reserve and continue on next year? I'm just curious on procedurally how you're going to deal with those 2019 items that were never complete.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Typically, carry forwards are brought forward in the meeting, the council meeting for approval. So we might not be looking at it in the budget process itself for 2020, but when it's brought forward to council, we'll have those, we might not know them until the end of the year, right? We might not have the exact numbers till the end of the year, so I guess it would be brought forward. I changed my mind mid-process there. But we'll have to bring them forward in the May when the tax rate is done. But as soon as we know which ones need to be carried forward, we'll advise council, and we have to approve that in our process. Council has to approve that because it's a new budget year. So even though it was approved in the past, we bring it forward for council to look at again.
Thank you. Yeah, so, my mind of where it goes in the process is any of the amounts that already taxes were received for, or there's grants that are paying for those particular items, that goes into reserve, either restricted or unrestricted, and those specific projects are budgeted for in the capital budget of the following year, and then you're showing us where the money is coming from to pay for those, whether it's from reserve or restricted, or unrestricted or restricted reserve, just so long as that's the process we're continuing with, and it's not something different in the current year, because there is a handful that are kind of unlooked at, and then the question becomes, from our perspective, if we don't know exactly which ones they are they important or not important, they didn't make it on the list this year, or were there other circumstances that went to that, and then it makes you question what's in the current year budget. They're going to be important enough next year as well. So that's kind of the process it goes through every year. You can think of an example in another career where having a desk in your office to meet with your staff has been something that's been pushed off the capital budget for like 6 years in a place that I am aware of. And it's just one of those things where it's never the most important thing to pay for that year, so it slides off to the next year. So question being, I think we're there. I'm good with the question. I'm changing my thought midway through the sentence as well. I did have one other comment though for Councillor Baker's kind of question about black holes. I think from what I heard from our CFO today was that, a couple of them that are, funds that maybe we didn't receive and we're not intending to receive this year. There's no projection of getting all the way there. Things like land sales. So those land sales, if we didn't see them this year, we're not necessarily going to see them at all. We made a stab in the dark. We thought certain things would happen, but it seems fairly evident that September 30th that those things that we believed would happen may not happen. Same with when she was discussing the fines from photo radar and things like that. We assumed that the process would look a certain way and that those funds would hit our bank account a certain way. It doesn't look as though that's going to happen in the current year. You may end up with a bunch of them hitting in another year, and then you end up with a year where you get a whole bunch of funds because of them working through the process. but it's hard to predict and hard to project when those are going to hit. So those are going to be some of the black holes that, you know, exist as you were referring to. Thanks.
The only thing I would say on the land sale side is the expense side is down as well.
Right.
I wouldn't say that on the fine revenue side, but we budget for a little bit on the, or we guessed how many lots we might sell on the residential and industrial side, but the expense side is also down because you expense that land to reserve, that money to reserve as well. So that's, on that side, there isn't, it's a wash at the end, or close to a wash.
Absolutely. Good point, City Manager, because I think that's important to remember that we will be off on income, but we'll also be off on the expenses if that land stays in inventory and transact.
Sorry, that just brought up another question in my mind when you were talking about it. As far as the inventory goes, did we write down inventory based on the changing of the value of the land value, or is the land recorded in inventory at cost?
Thanks for the question. The land is valued at the lesser cost or market value, so we generally put it at cost.
Right, thank you. So then there would be no write-down of it at year end, because the presumption would be that it's still going to be the same situation where the value of the land inventory is going to be greater, the fair market value, than the cost to actually buy those lots, develop them, and get them going. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for council's direction on 6.3.2 regarding financial statements. Council Buckingham.
I move the council accept the financial statements as presented.
Seconded. Council Fagan. Is there any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you, CFO. Moving on to 6.4.
Thank you, Worship, to present 6.4.1 City Community Facilities 2019 Building Report. I'll turn it over to Executive Manager Don Staggs.
Thank you, City Manager. Before you, we have the City Community Facilities 2019 Building Report that was compiled by our internal building committee. And administration is looking for a recommendation that council accept the Community Facilities 2019 Building Report as information. In November of 2018, an internal committee was developed from internal city staff, including myself, City Manager, Director of Recreation and Culture, and our Senior Manager of Building and Facilities. The objective of that committee was to look at internal and external reviews of all city-owned facility, including our recreational facilities and operational buildings. The internal and external reviews were conducted to evaluate economic and operational feasibility, identifying and address any operating constraints, and ensure capital investments are serving the community at the highest priority level. The City Community Facilities 2019 report is attached and is a snapshot of the condition of various building facets. Within the report are recommendations brought forward by administration and recently completed facility reviews by ACI Ice Plant Review of City Facilities, the Lloydminster Cultural and Science Center Feasibility Report, and the Lloydminster Recreational Facilities Analysis Report. Estimated costs are presented in dollars to repair or replace building elements, and they are also included in this report. We've pulled out 5 facilities that administration feels are important to bring forward. Although all buildings are attached in the report, we wanted to bring to the surface 5 that we feel have some need for immediate discussion. The Civic Center, so I'll just go through the table for council and explain what we're talking about from an administration perspective. So the first facility is the Civic Center, Centennial Civic Center. Facility rating is end of life. That is due to the extensive rehabilitation work that is required. The building is currently operational and we're reviewing opportunities for future facility replacement. Based on the report, there is significant capital investment required over the next 2 to 8 years that pushes that building over needing investment in that building, and it's starting to push administration to look at replacement versus investing that significant capital in the existing building. From our perspective, the anticipated remaining useful life for the city is 2 to 4 years on that facility. Costs will be determined through a feasibility study that is currently ongoing, and there will be community engagement through that process as that report is developed. Our community services building, the facility rating is end of life. Due to similar to the Civic Center, it is requires extensive rehabilitation over the next 0 to 5 years. Our anticipated remaining useful life for city operations is 0 years. Leases will be expire by the end of June 2020, and the building will be vacant as of July 1st, 2020. Within our capital budget coming forward for 2020, administration is looking to get approval to move forward with the building demolition at a cost of $350,000. Sorry I missed it on the Civic Center. In the 2020 budget, administration will be bringing some funds forward to pursue the design of a new facility that would be incorporated into the feasibility study. Fire Hall 1, excuse me, is end of life. The building cannot adapt to meet the needs of the full-time fire department as it currently sits. Administration or years of anticipated remaining useful life of that facility for the city is 0 to 1 year. Currently the building is operational. We've limited the operational use, and we're reviewing options for a future facility replacement. In the 2020 budget, we're looking for some funds to do design and construction of a new facility. Our Heritage Building, this building is at end of life, so it's structurally sound, however, requires an extensive interior rehabilitation. City's anticipated use due to the extensive amount of capital required to rehabilitate is 0 years. The building is currently vacant, and we are continuing to operate our heating elements to keep the building functional, but it has 0 tenants in it, and limited viability for city use, and we're reviewing options for what we're going to do with the building moving forward. Lloydminster Culture and Science Center, end of life. Again, extensive rehabilitation is required. Our anticipated useful life years remaining from a city's perspective is 0 years. We are currently operating that facility, and we're reviewing options for future facility replacement. We have also will be looking to seek for some funds in the 2020 budget for design, as well as potential new building. The PSM building at Bud Miller Park, the current condition is marginal to poor. It is structurally sound, but the interior needs some renovations. That building has a useful life of 20 plus years. We're operating it and reviewing options for future interior rehabilitation to better utilize the space, and we'll be looking for $25,000 to $30,000 in the 2020 budget to start the process of getting an interior design complete, and as well as moving forward with the construction of those rehabilitations. So just to go to a little bit further on the 3 larger projects, Fire Hall 1, the infrastructure needs assessment and engineering study completed by S2 Architect in 2019 identified that the sporadic needs required for operating a full-time fire department in the city of Lloydminster cannot be met by Fire Hall 1. It confirmed that the original building could not be adapted to meet these needs, and the potential for reusing the 1991 expansion to the north is limited due to an easement through the middle of the site. Currently, administration is conducting an internal review evaluation for potential viable sites for a replacement of Fire Hall 1, and monies have been included for council's, or will be included for council's consideration in the 2020 capital budget. The Lloydminster Culture and Science Center. The Lloydminster Culture and Science Center, I apologize, infrastructure and functional sporadic needs study completed by Cornerstone Planning Group identified that the facility is considered suboptimal at best. The attached report, it's not attached, administration will bring that report forward to council for information at the next council meeting. The report that it's referring to here is the building committee report. So the report provides a summary of options for consideration. Monies have been allocated for council's consideration in 2020 capital budget for the design of a new facility. Should council recommend administration move forward with replacement of the Culture and Science Center, public engagement will be sought as part of that process. And thirdly, the recreational feasibility study, as referred to in the following: Archie Miller Arena, the BioClean Aquatic Facility, and the Civic Center, Centennial Civic Center. Administration is in the initial phase of conducting a recreational feasibility study, which will provide a detailed report on the viability for a new aquatic center and arena centers. It is anticipated that the recreational study will be completed in the first quarter of 2020. Public engagement will be sought if recommendations for a recreational feasibility study include a new recreation facility, pool and/or arenas within the city of Lloydminster. And I'll pass it back to your worship and council for any questions.
Thank you, Executive Manager Stern. Questions, comments? Yeah, I think that's a good expression, Councilor Baker. This is not news that any council, any community wants to hear. And what's been laid out is that there's a number of facilities or buildings known in this city that have been owned by the city that have reached a point in their lifespan that the question has to be asked. I think Councilor Dychak, take words that you used, that 60% factor, at what point do we not maintain and have to consider replacement because of the age? Having a chance to review the city community facilities report prepared by administration. Looking forward to the additional reports because I'm sure the public will like to see those as well. Comment to the administration as this comes forward. So I think there's going to be a great deal of discussion in our community. How do we arrive at this? We have some supporting documentation, some discussion. How do we move forward? I think is going to be the bigger discussion. Because I don't think anyone will argue that the Heritage Building, as an example, is not getting any newer anytime soon, but it has significant historical value in this community. But does it fit the city today in our plans? But I believe that this, as the administration's brought forward, there's opportunities for others. Where in other cases, the arena, the Civic Center has been evaluated by some professionals. We've had engineers look at it, and now we have to have the rubber hit the road, as they say, to deal with the issues that are there. Because at the end of the day, I'm afraid not everything stands forever. That perspective. So, from my perspective, I appreciate the work that administration's done on this. The city manager, the executive manager, and the management team. The work that's went into it from having consultants, because I think that's the important thing. We've had people that are professionals look at these buildings and determine, you know, I can say the farmer in me is always wants to salvage something, but sometimes there's just not enough to be salvageable. And that perspective, so I think we're going to have to take a hard look at this. I appreciate it being put together in a very clean and simple format that anyone can sit down and read, following into more in-depth, because the report from the city is good, and I think the reports behind it support even more if you want to take the time and dive into it. Councilor.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I appreciate us reaching this point. I know that since taking office, one of the challenges has been, I guess, hearing reports on the standards and quality of our facilities. We've heard about the Imhoff collection and our inability to maintain the integrity of that art collection and our Cultural Science Center, and the cost really affiliated with HVAC units and the like to ensure that we protect it. We've had the opportunity to tour through most of the buildings, I think all of the buildings, in fact, and have a look at the challenges. And thanks to Peter and Q and others, Dawn, yourself, that have taken us through there. When you see it firsthand, you really get I think, a better grasp, I think, of the challenges that are there. I know in the past, I had a vehicle that when it reached the point when it kept breaking down, I realized that I could keep replacing the parts, but at some point in time, I would still have a vehicle that would just continue to break down. And the expression of spending good money after bad really is captured, I think, here. And at some point, as we're managing the funds and the taxes that our ratepayers are paying, if we continue to invest money in buildings that are going to simply continue to take more and more money, it's just not good business practice, whether you do it at home or whether you do it on behalf of the city. These reports really allow us, I think, to capture all of the information and make a decision and set some timelines around going forward. I think, as you heard from Councillor Baker, that challenges in the past have been, well, we need to do this, and certainly from the finance perspective, we have reserves set aside, we have financial planning, we have people in place that can really, I think, capture that financial picture that we need to have that goes along with this piece as well. But it's also helped to, I think, more than anything, help us realize that continuing to spend more money is not the way to go in some of these facilities. So again, Dawn, thanks to you, Peter, whoever else is involved in presenting this information. I think now it's up to council to really look at this, find some input from the community, and act and make some decisions really that are in the best interest of the community going forward.
Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really, for what this report is, to me, is a lot of bad news, some good, but a lot of bad news, in that it's a little bit tough to swallow some of it. But just to make sure, for context, as I understand it, receiving this report as information is really making this a public document so that ratepayers can see where the life of the facilities are at. And the recommendations included in there are recommendations that are not being accepted or decided on today. There's going to be additional steps through the process to decide on individual parts or pieces, and budgets will be allocated to do different things based on the individual budget discussions that happen with those specific items. So not everything is happening in this report that is maybe individuals feel like is being suggested all at once. This is still a work in process, but for me, what this report really does is it takes kind of a larger issue with many city facilities, and it puts them all in front of you and gives you kind of the big picture of what's going on and where do funds and efforts need to be directed in the future, and how do we continue to provide the level of service, or a better level of service, to our ratepayers without throwing, as Councillor Diachef said, good money to bad money. There was a couple of years back where this all started, and I believe Rick McDonald was still here with us, and there was potentially we were going to spend $1.5 million on an HVAC unit at the Cultural and Science Center because it needed a new HVAC unit, which was fine, other than the building had almost, at that time, expired its useful life, and this really started the process as far as where this is coming from, which is, whoa, we can't just make a decision on this one building without having a big picture view of what all of our facilities look like, so that we can make an intelligent path towards ensuring that we have the optimal product and aren't throwing away money at projects that ultimately could end up in a building that could not survive in the end. So much, I think, has to be done and decided on before we get there with any particular item. I know one that I believe will make members of the public wince is when we talk about the heritage building in general, and just so that there's some clarification on that, that particular building, if it were to be sold, it's difficult for the city to find anything to do with a building of that size and footprint in terms of what kind of programming space do you do with it, with the cost that would go into the renovations that are needed in that building. What is required of a purchaser in terms of keeping the overall look of it?
Yeah, thank you. I guess to answer a couple questions, yes, you're correct with the report. The only recommendation we're asking from council is to adopt a report as information. Those recommendations were identified by the internal building committee for council's discussion and consideration as we move through the process. So we should have been more clear with that, so I apologize for that. With regards to the Heritage Building, that building has historical, I'm going to mix up the word, but it has historical significance, and the exterior of that building will need to meet certain standards, whether it's owned by the city or not. At the end of the day, that facility or that building would stay looking the same from an exterior perspective, would have some requirements through a heritage building process. But internally, over the years, many renovations and alterations have occurred on the interior, and the interior is open to renovations, and the historical significance isn't on the interior, it's on the outside, and that would remain in place whether the city owned it or another purchaser was interested in that building.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. The story of the aging building or buildings, it's just a fact of life. You look back at the years when a lot of our buildings were built, whether it be Centennial Civic Center, the Fire Hall, etc. I think the Fire Hall has been built on about 4 times. Sooner or later, these things wear out. It's like your car. You can only patch them so long, and you have to do something about it. For many years, we had reserve policies. And thanks to our leadership today, we're starting to develop new reserve policies. So we know where we're going, and we can set priorities. We know that we have certain buildings that have to be built regardless. We need fire halls, essential service buildings of those natures to carry on the essential service in the city. So those really aren't the biggest issue. Those just have to be done, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth. Our recreational buildings, we had a really good start when we built the Communiplex, the multiplex, we had the Communiplex, we had the Victor Theater, but we've got to keep going. The city never dies, it's got to keep growing. And I think there's 2 or 3 buildings out there that have lived their useful life. And I think some of those buildings, trying to do an assessment is wonderful, but until you can get inside the walls and see what's really going on, sometimes you don't know. Because you just can't see what's going on in there. The question of heritage buildings, I never could quite understand that. Like building it from the ground up, it comes to a point, it's beyond repair. You just keep churning the wheels. The city's got a great future, and I think it's really important. So, the reserve policy priority list is probably the #1 thing on the list. What are we going to do next? What should we build first? So that you can engage the city, people that live in this city. We would look at whatever that might be, whether it be a new swimming pool, a new library, whatever. I know the library's been on the docket verbally for probably 25 years. And we're still waiting and talking about the library. Whether it's a priority or not, the people will decide. But I think this is a wonderful way to start, and I thank you guys for doing that, and keep up the good work, because that's the only way you're going to advance our public building sector within the city. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Monroe.
Thank you. So this document obviously has a lot of pertinent information in it, and I thank Joelle and Peter, Don, and Dion for putting it all together. But this document really reflects to everybody in our community, whether you're into arts or you work in one of these buildings or you're into sports. There's a lot of real high-level information and a lot of, I guess, questions that people are going to be asking. So I just want to reiterate that the time will be spent as we're heading into the budgeting process to be engaging with the public to be into the new year in 2020, to be talking to you guys about what you want for our community. No decisions will be made around this table without first engaging each and every, well, as many people that want to come out to our engagement sessions. So this isn't a decision that we're going to be taking lightly, and we're not going to be prioritizing things solely on what we believe is important to our community, but rather the input from the residents. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
The city administration is planning a engagement or your voice night for early December where some of these buildings will be there as well as other topics. So that's still in the planning stage. Dion and I were just questioning the date. We'll confirm that and bring it out to public.
Excellent. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. It sounds like December 3rd is the date we're anticipating for that.
Goes back to that comment from Doug Griffiths about door paint, right? We gotta keep going and get things done. You know, the Civic Center is an example. The Cultural and Science Center is an example. It's probably not a surprise to a lot of people, realistically, the ones that are engaged that take a look at these buildings. But it could always be worse. There's a community or two in Saskatchewan that had to shut down their rigs because they weren't proactive enough to actually dig into this and look at it. And it became a safety concern, and they were told that they had to shut down those rigs, and they were farming out to other communities to use those properties just to keep their general community functions going. So as much as the news might look bad on buildings like that, we have it. We can start to make a plan for it. We'll engage the community in that process, and we're not in dire straits in that regard, because as much as you look at this and go, it could be worse, and it's not. So trying to become as half full type of look at this here, because I would hate us to be in the other position where we had all this testing done on a building like the Civic Center, and it came back and said, whoa, you left us too long, and we didn't. So thanks to the administration and everybody for being proactive in this and getting us to where we are, because then we can roadmap the future and not end up in a train wreck like that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction from Council on 6.4.1 recommendation. Councillor Dutcher.
Move that council accept the City Community Facilities 2019 Building Report as information.
Seconded, Councillor Buckingham. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to agenda item 6.7.1. And just stepping over to Council Chamber and turning the chair to Deputy Mayor.
Oh, that's it.
Pardon me?
6.7.1, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ferguson. To present 6.7.1 Larson Grove Phase 3, Stage 1C, Land Use Bylaw 5-2016 Amendment. I'll ask Anthony Andre from Planning to come forward.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
The purpose of the report is to recommend first reading of bylaw 27-2019, being a bylaw to amend part of parcel B, land 101-564-377, from R1 single detached residential to R3 row house residential. In order to accommodate for the construction of 16 row house dwelling units as intended by the applicant, an amendment to the land use bylaw must be approved. Upon receipt of the application, the department initiated a referral process looking for responses from internal departments, external agencies, and adjacent landowners. 5 objections were received from adjacent property owners with concerns respecting the density of the neighborhood and potential increase in traffic volumes and potential negative impacts on property values. Planning and development does not anticipate a significant increase in traffic volumes or demand on on-street parking as the proposed development would only result in an increase of 6 units. 10 the 16 townhouses would replace 10 single-family dwellings. In addition to this, the developer has stated that the units are low occupancy, designed for young professionals and seniors, noting that the units do not include basements. If first hearing is granted today, a public hearing will be held November 25th, 2019.
Councilor Buckingham?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I gotta tell you that things like this make me nervous. If I bought a house at 3701 42nd Avenue, if you look at that, or 3801, whatever, and then we go ahead and we change the zoning in front of that, did I buy that property based on the fact that it was zoned the way it was zoned before? And now we're gonna go and change that, and I'm gonna have a whole different complex right out that front window, right? How do we go forward avoiding making these fairly large changes to an area? You got 5 responses back, you said, from different people in the area. So the report goes on to tell us that administration doesn't feel that we're gonna have much of an issue there. What it doesn't tell me is that those 5, what were those 5 responses? Were those 5 people that put the time into doing that, were they adequately satisfied with our assurances and our answers if we were going to change this? It really concerns me when we start doing that in a partially developed area.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have, we've reached out to the respondents, provided them rationale for recommendation, and we've also invited them to meet with us in person if they're not satisfied. At this point, we haven't received any commitment to do that.
Yeah, and for me, I wanted to bring it up because it underscores the public hearing. If there are people that have concerns about redoing this, please come to us. Please express those concerns and inform us about them. Because we don't have a lot of engagement, it seems that way, when it comes to this stuff. But if you want to do it, that's why we have these public hearings, right? So I would encourage anybody that has feelings like I feel a little bit about it to bring those forward. On the flip side of the coin, I'm not saying that for the economic development purposes and for anything else, it's not a good thing, but it concerns me a little.
Councilor Baker.
Well, Your Worship, I've always had that concern, and you've heard me question it before. Like, we do an area structure plan for subdivision, and we set out the zoning, and that's the city's responsibility. And we do that. And on a very regular basis, we're asked to rezone, and I understand why. But at the same time, I'm somewhat like Councilor Buckingham. If I was next door, I wouldn't know I'd be very happy about that. And so, there's lots of land in town, I'm sure, that isn't plotted up that we could redistrict, that's a new word to me in the last 2 years, redistrict. There's lots of land for sale over there. Light old lots right there, next to an R1. That's all R1 to the north, right? And R4 to the south, across the road.
That's correct.
Yeah, so couldn't they build them somewhere else? It's not because there isn't any other land. Just a question. The other thing I'm not sure what this statement really means. It says, oh, it's not going to be busy because it's going to be young adults or seniors. Now, what does that mean? Is that a red herring in the report? What is that? How do you control young adults or seniors if you got 2 fourplexes? I don't know how you do that. What bylaw would cover that? If you wanted to put an old guy like me in there, maybe it's okay. You want to put a 40-year-old, are they qualified? Or 20-year-old, what does that all that really mean? And I think it's got nothing to do with it. The fact that there's the number of people that are going to live there on a number of lots, when you have a look at it and the kind of design it is, there will be some impact on some people. But I would like to hear from the people that are opposed to it and the reasoning. It's only fair. Not everybody likes to come to public hearings as a spectacle. And I'll tell you why, because sometimes their neighbors frown on them because they didn't go along with the plan. And that's not right either, but that's the reality. It's like complaining about your neighbor's dog. Some people don't want their name given out because then they're gonna have to fight with the neighbor for the next 20 years. And that's not right either. It might be right, but it's true. That happens. So the question is, what are these folks that are opposed to it really saying? Just a question.
Administration, want to respond to that?
Yeah, I won't respond to the comments provided. I think Anthony and our planning department are better off responding to that. Just to bring in to light, I know you talked about an area structure plan process. This development didn't occur under the area structure plan process. That's a new process we have been working very hard on internally from our planning and development department, and we are making a lot of headway, but there were some areas of the city that were over 80% already developed when we brought further requirements through on the area structure plan, and those are being established under an outline plan per se. They're still meeting all the requirements that are legislative requirements, but there isn't an actual area structure plan document tied to this particular area. With regards to converting R1 over to R3 or R4, 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was, the R4 that is currently south of there was R1 at one point and was converted over to the R4 in order to develop the current building that's on site there. My estimation from the developer is he has a market to, or they have a market to build this type of development, which is why they're coming forward looking for an area to develop it. This area already has services, sidewalks, roads, and is ready to move forward, which is why their request is coming. As far as the comments from residents, I'll pass that back to Anthony for further comment.
Thank you, Executive. Understand.
Thank you, Councillor. As mentioned earlier, we have reached out and we are hoping to meet with some of the residents with respect to their concerns. When the referral went out, we had a little bit less information than we had, so we have been able to provide them with a little bit more, such as the fact that these buildings are going to be one story. They are again aimed at low occupancy. The point of that is they're not intending to have families in there. They're intending to have 1 or 2 people. Meeting the expectation would be that there would be a low amount of traffic generated from that.
That's big.
Your Worship, we went through this about a year ago with, on the north end, somewhere up there, north of this site, where R1 was rezoned. And if my memory serves me right, there was no objections. And it took about a month to get a drawing to see what the site really looked like. And this refers to a rendering. Well, a rendering to me never has been good enough. It's an artist's conception. And where's the drawing of the site, and the site plan, and how it affects the people, where the wind is going to be, and all that kind of stuff. It can only make sense to me that it doesn't have to be a complete set of working drawings, but it can be elevations, front, back, or, front, back, and side walls, where the fencing's going to be and stuff like that. To me, that's just, I don't know, they call that an artist's conception. So I don't know, is it going to be built just like that, or is it going to be built like, there's a difference in my mind in the language of the industry. So that's all I have to say, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I have returned to the chair for the official record. And you better speak, so there you have the floor.
Perfect, thanks. So I guess just first hearing about the objections that do exist, for us as a council, getting the report back to make sure that those individuals' concerns have been addressed and dealt with, and that that their comments don't go unheard, I think is important. So whatever the process looks like for us to ensure that those homeowners who are already there, or builders who already own lots who haven't actually built the properties yet, so long as you let us know that that's been dealt with appropriately and we feel fine with it, I guess that's all we can do at this point. But other than that, when I look at this property, I'm not totally sure what I'm seeing as far as that rendering goes versus what was on the original site plan when it had 10 lots. And my question is just about, what the number of parking stalls are going to look like. Because to me, if this rendering is accurate, you're looking at one parking stall per unit. So if there's 8 units on each side, that would mean 8 cars. But I know a lot of developments in the city, I don't know what the width of these particular properties, but would they be able to have a 2-wide parking stall? So all of a sudden you'd be talking about actually having less parking if it was in its current system. On this one, if they were able to have 2 cars wide parking. Does that make any sense? So if each of these units, because it appears to be 8 on each side, 16 units total rather than 10, if each of them would only have 1 parking stall, that works out to a total of only 16 parking spots, taking up room on the street. Whereas if it were 10 individual lots, they could all have double wide parking, and that could be 20 parking spots. So from the other people on the road, it may actually be preferable to have this type of development rather than the R1 that it currently is. But I don't know whether or not that size block can actually have 2 wide parking stalls, because it is relatively narrow looking lots. So, and I'd be interested in knowing whether or not between the two, whether there's an improvement in terms of the amount of on-street parking that's available under this rendering versus the other one.
Yeah, so I don't have dimensions of the 10 lots that would have otherwise been constructed before. Of course, I wouldn't have site plans for those as well, so it's difficult to state exactly how many garages or parking spaces there would have been off-site in that case. In this case, there would be, as you mentioned, 1 garage for each unit and a driveway parking space in the front. So you would be able to park 2 vehicles in tandem for each unit.
Okay. So, even without the dimensions, I think what I'm saying still very likely could be true. I'd be interested in knowing if that size of lot, if you are able to have double parking, as in 2 wide parking spots, or if it has to be single, because they do appear to be relatively narrow, but that is in 2D, so it's hard to say for sure. But I actually believe there might be an improvement for those individuals, and it's something worth looking into, whether or not the land use bylaw would allow for a parking space that is 2 wide in those 10 lots, because I literally believe that there's an improvement in terms of on-street parking from this development rather than a different one. And that's what most homeowners are going to care about. I don't think the argument of property values will hold any kind of water for this type of property versus another one, whether it has a significant effect on theirs. So, mind you, that's not my job to make that argument. It's the job of administration to make sure that they've dealt with those concerns.
Councilor Datcher.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to wrap my head around the picture, and I think it's been alluded to already. I'm just, from the drawings, I really can't, and I'm not asking you to explain it, but I'm just trying to think of where the 4 entrances are per unit, and I'm struggling with that, and I think that's in part some of the ambiguity around the presentation that's there. But more importantly for me, I guess, as I look at the slide just before this, well, we can start with this. So there's a section on the slide we'll go up to that says R3. Is that going to be the green zone on the bottom left corner? So if we go back to the slide above now, and it says R3 there, that purple, is that green the R3?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's currently constructed and occupied by.
Oh, it is, okay, yeah, because in the picture it just has all grass on it, I was going like, this is not gonna.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, there's 2-story townhouses constructed there.
Okay, thank you.
Not being a planner, it's challenging, and I know that's why Anthony and we have the administration team, and certainly as I listen to other communities, and I hear that people want to mix in a community, and how do you define a community or a neighborhood? Because I look at Saskatoon and see areas where the city is challenged because they didn't mix R1 with R2, with R3, with R4, to allow that community to grow, or that neighborhood. I think that's something I hope we look forward to, and our planning team can look to that in the future. What are we going to see in 40, 50 years? And I know, Councilor Baker, up to you, because you've been here the longest in this table, within the community, from around this table, I believe. But, you know, how do we have that transition? Because as a community ages, there's going to be transition. You know, you've had neighbors come and go, I'm sure. And you having someone move into an area and say, boy, it might start in an R4 and then move to an R1 and end up in an R3 in this case, and never leave your neighborhood, if that's possible. Maybe just down the street, if that's the case. And is that where we need to go? Because that's the way it seems that, I don't want to use the word evolution, but the way things have materialized over time, and certainly I see it in much bigger cities that have been there maybe longer, or have established even a larger neighborhoods. And I think that's one of the items that I keep in mind is how do we make a neighborhood attractive for as many people as possible to meet the needs of the community. And certainly it's something I think that it's worth doing the first reading. I'd like to hear from the neighbors, because you're absolutely right, Council, that it's, people have bought or perceived bias. So say it's a bias. You've expected to be in individual single homes in the neighborhood, and then all of a sudden something changes. But in the same token, sometimes we may need to take that time to look at that second option, because I think it's got some benefits maybe in the long haul, and hopefully that it does the value. Because as I think about it, as my life has changed from having a family to not having a family, what's the next step? Maybe an R3 would be a perfect step. Planning on doing that in the near future, but on the same token, it would fit. And if that existed in a neighborhood that people are living in today, they may find that attractive. So I think it's something we need to keep open, but at the same time, we acknowledge the existing landowners around it. So I think giving it the first reading and let the community speak up if that's where they're at through the administration, or to come to this council, and that's the discussion at that public meeting. And you've got good points, Councilor Baker, that people don't always feel comfortable, but I think if it's an important enough issue, I think reach out to us either individually or hopefully make that appearance. Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to ask a question pertaining to Councilor Baker's comments. You could send that letter in to the city clerk to have presented at a public hearing if you weren't able to and or comfortable standing here to make that statement.
Any correspondence you receive that direct towards council, we would provide to council for their consideration.
But it is allowable for someone to say, I'd like this presented at the public hearing, I apologize, I can't be here, and we would do that.
Absolutely, and we'd allow it to form part of the public record.
Yeah, good, thank you. That's what I don't think a lot of people know that either. So just wanted to put that out there in a public setting, that yes, if you can't be here, you feel strongly enough about it, please do send it.
Councilor Baker.
Well, Your Worship, you're right to a point, and I can't agree with you 100% for this reason. In another world, private sector, I work for corporations in the landowner business. We ran into this all the time, and we said no, because we're always in trouble. You can send a letter to 20 people in this town. You're lucky if 5% of them will return a form letter. Throw in the garbage in the post office, as the old saying goes. After the thing is built is when you have the trouble. Well, how did that get there? Well, we sent you a letter. What letter? And on and on and on it goes. Traditionally, R1 property costs more money than multifamily properties. You paid a premium to have an R1 lot, and you didn't have a bunch of vehicles. There's no parking on the south side of that R3 lot on the street. By the looks of that site plan, if that's the site plan. Maybe one car between the two driveways. Doesn't matter now. But what happens is, the public expects city council to protect them. They don't have to be out there watching that we might change the zoning on them. The problem is, detailed drawings show you a lot more than that rendering does. And if people are gonna buy R1 lots, we should start advertising, well, if people wanna change this is what you do. So what's the point of going through this? Why do we zone the land if it's not sold? Why even zone it? So why do we zone it in the first place? I looked at that map too and I said, that's not R3 land. I went down and looked, that's R1 land. This map says it's R3. And it confuses people. At first I thought, is that R3 land? But it's not. And for someone to sell that for an R3 property and get a buy-in from the neighbors around there, I don't think municipalities do a very good job of notifying the public. We send them out a form letter and say this and this and this. And I think if we're gonna do that, it might be at the owner's expense. Somebody has to go and talk to people within 10 lots of there and talk to them personally. I don't know who that person should be, but sending a form letter out, to me, isn't really sufficient. When they expect this council to protect them when they buy land. And that's why I disagree. Because I know and you know how many times people say, well, I didn't know that. And I didn't know that until we see it out there. And you have a lot of examples I'll give you in the city that's already happened on bigger projects than this. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor, and I think that I'm not going to disagree with you on that, public information, that meeting the law, which this council and administration continues to do, giving public notice. That's been in debate lately because traditionally the newspaper was the form of advertising that was accepted. Now provincial governments are changing provincial legislation that allows for online advertising. And as we all know, it comes back to that point. We can advertise, we can have it on Facebook, say Facebook and newspaper, radio ads, and people will still approach us and say, I didn't hear about that. And it baffles me because I'm not sure what communication methodology we need to approach to get people's attention. And you're absolutely right. It's usually we hear about it after the fact. And I can't apologize for that because we've tried to meet the legislation, and the administration does on a regular basis. And I think that's the important key. But your point well taken. Point well taken.
Some would say, Your Worship, if you hadn't changed it, I wouldn't have a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's that argument to be made.
Your Worship, just to confirm, the R4 is zoned R4 currently.
Right.
The R1 is currently zoned R1, and the R3 is currently zoned R3. The purple.
It is zoned R3?
Yeah.
Or are you proposing to change it to R3?
No.
The purple that is indicated as R3 is currently R3 and has row housing currently on it. The area we're looking to, or the developer is looking to rezone are the lots north of that R3. From R1, they want to change that from R1 to R3.
Okay. All right. So I think that Councillor Baker and I both have the same look. So Councillor, if we refer back to the colored map, if we can, please, Wendy. That one right out, just back one. That one. So the piece of property in question isn't the R3 that you're saying. We thought it's the area north of R3. So that's an open existing piece of.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. So the this puts the rendering simply is a rendering of what proposed building.
The rest of the case, they need a site plan.
Yeah, I agree. It's a little more challenging how that fits. I didn't.
Not to totally confuse on this project.
But Your Worship, that's why I asked earlier, is that if we look at the drawing, that if you just go back to those two slides where it's the purple and the pink and have the R3 on it, that one, and if you scroll to the next one, the R3 is the one on the left-hand bottom corner, and there's actually row houses in there.
Right.
So that's not an accurate representation, so that
That's
there's,
where it's
so the
confusing.
point about no parking, all the rest of it, yeah, because this is row housing, that's fully developed, it's R3, to the north is vacant.
So I know where they're at. I even drove and looked.
Yeah. So to the north of it is what's question. What's the question?
Just to add one more, Natasha just confirmed, from a parking perspective, the R3 requirement is the same as R1. So for parking requirements per dwelling.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Fagan, you have the floor.
Yeah, well, that's, I understood that right from the beginning how this was. I've gone and taken a look at the site a few times, and if I'm not mistaken, when you're just going to the north of the proposed area, that first row there, there's no housing in that area. The backs of the housing facing that are there, if I'm correct, and then as long down the side as well. So if you're hearing from anybody on the north side, that would be looking out their back window, and at some point in time, there's going to be houses that would be in front of that. So the people that are going to be coming in and purchasing those will know that there's going to be, there will be a R3 development there.
If you go back to the air photo, you can see that, right? That all the houses out by the tower were right there. That's what's there now.
Yeah.
Right? You can see, if you look at that, and if you were to go back, if you were to go back to the rendering, you can see what the proposed future, you can see around the outside edges, that's what they're assuming is gonna be developed.
That's right, yeah.
I don't know how many of those lots are sold that are around there right now. That are vacant around the edge of that, I don't know.
Just as a point, the airport is from 2016, so not sure what is actually curved for housing.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
For grabbing, it's still pretty close.
Your worship, in view of all this misunderstanding, I think you should develop a policy, you get a site plan showing what's around there when you do these changes. I totally misread that, and I've been reading plans a long time. And I know that Councillor Fagnan read it wrong, because he phoned me and asked me a question about it. And I totally read it wrong. A rendering of what rest of my case. There's no direction on the map, there's nothing there.
Good points, Councilor. Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess at the end of the day, this is an item that if we do the first reading today, we will have an opportunity to see this again. If there's any additional information that maybe clears things up a little bit, makes it as clear of a picture as possible, we can get that at another meeting. Awesome. Let's start I'm going to make that motion. So a second.
Any other comments before you call some other meeting second? Fair enough. I'm going to send you that.
Nope, I got it. Look at it.
There's a fire.
Great. I recommend that council grant first reading to bylaw 27-2019, being a bylaw to amend approximately 0.42 hectares, 1.04 acres of parcel B, plan 101564377 in the northeast quarter section 35, township 49, range 28, west of the 3rd meridian, on land use map being part 4 to land use bylaw 5-2016 from R1 single detached residential to R3 row house residential district, and that council establish a public hearing to be held at City Hall council chambers during the regular council meeting on November 25th, 2019 at 2 p.m.
Seconder, Councilor Rowe. Any further discussion?
Your worship, could we get a proper site plan with directions and maps and what's out there prior to that meeting so we can understand, or I can understand what's going on over there?
Administration?
Yeah, we'll be requesting the developer to provide a more clear site plan in the near future. And we'll provide it once we have it.
And I apologize to anybody if I misread this, but I did. And I don't think I'm the only one.
Let's do Councilor. With that, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.
Moving on to the agenda of item number 7, correspondence, information items. Moving on to item number 8 is the mayor and council reports. My report is attached for information and viewing of the public and council. It was a very busy month this last month. We had several visits from ministers from the government of Alberta leading into the budgetary steps as they're making their way through the process. Had the opportunity to attend the City Mayor's Caucus in Regina with the city clerk and discuss several issues pertinent. Meeting again, they had a reception with ministers and MLAs from the government and the opposition, which was not as well attended as in the past, but they were just hadn't quite got back to sitting yet, so that resulted in some of that. Certainly, Edmonton met with the Northern Mayors and Reeves that Mayor Iverson hosts. It was an opportunity to discuss truth and reconciliation, which was quite interesting, having hereditary chief of Treaty 8 there to speak and some of the discussions. This past week was a trip to Regina for the throne speech. The government of Saskatchewan is entering their final year of their term, and there'll be an election in the fall of 2020. The throne speech was interesting. There was no nuggets for municipalities at this time, so we'll wait for the budget. But certainly it was an interesting opportunity to converse with cabinet ministers, MLAs, and did speak to Senator Tatchuk, one of the senators from Saskatchewan who represents the province of Saskatchewan in the Senate. So there was an opportunity followed by attending of the budget in Edmonton. The city manager and I haven't had a chance to glean through all the highlights yet of the budget. I can share, and it was shared before, there is going to be a cut in MSI funding as we know it. The question is it in the 2020 budget for us, or is it in the next year? We need to clarify that with the province of Alberta and AUMA, as well as an additional cut the following year. The numbers I've heard is 9% and 13% in the following number in that funding. Budget did contain good news for FCSS funding that the city receives, and a program of 80-20 cost sharing. That money remains unchanged. RCMP lease funding from the province of Alberta remained the same, as well as the little bit we get for the library stayed the same. So there was some positive points. Certainly the Premier had been very clear in the Minister of Municipal Affairs that there would be a cost or a funding reduction to us, and city administration, I believe, was aware of that, so it's been looked at. It's just a matter of bringing those percentages into place now. So from that perspective, the rest of the month there was a great deal of travel and a lot of meetings with different people, but so I appreciate the council stepped up to fill in places where I couldn't attend to represent the city, and we'll take it from there. But we will be able to move forward. It's just going to be just a little tighter as usual in financial end. Up to any councillors that have any other reports? Councillor Monroe?
I had the opportunity to attend the ARPA conference last week, and on the banquet on Saturday night, one of our Young Lloydminster youth received the Lieutenant Governor Award, the runner-up, for the Community Leader of Tomorrow. So Jordan Boyan was the recipient of that, so it was wonderful to be in the presence for him to receive that award. And one of the past presidents told me that they believe he is the youngest to ever have received that award, so it was pretty cool to see him receive it.
Terrific. Councillor Torsten?
Thank you, Your Worship. Last week I had the pleasure of bringing greetings on behalf of the City Council while the Mayor was away to the Chamber of Commerce Business Awards. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is last year we made a decision to split up parts of the Golf and Curling Center, and one of the things we ended up doing was tendering out our pro shop, and the individual that we tendered out the pro shop to won the Customer Service Award, so in their first year of business. So congratulations to Marty Wheaton, and very impressed with everything I heard, all the good things about that business. So that's all. Thank you.
I just wanted to compliment and congratulate all the winners of the business awards in our city. The Chamber organized a very well done event, I understand, and I do apologize I wasn't able to attend. Thank you, Councillor, for stepping in to represent the city, but I think that congratulations to all the winners and to all the small businesses in our community. None of us, I think we all know the conditions that exist in the marketplace today in the retail world, and it's not an easy business to be in right now, and local businesses continue to strive to try to provide excellent value and service to the customers that they serve. Hats off to those folks. Last week I did my article to the Bee was to highlight small businesses. So it's certainly an important part of our community. I'm glad that they're here to support our community in more ways than one, not just simply the retail that provides merchandise for us each and services, but also the support they give to every organization in the city, nonprofit, from sports to culture to recreation to the whole 9 yards and the other pieces that makes it for a tremendous community. Thank you to the small businesses. Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although I was unable to attend, I think it's very worth noting that the Lloydminster Youth Council was sworn in on Monday night in the city. And this holds a particularly close place to my heart for having the youth of our community engage and become the future leaders of our community. We have an exceptional group of young men and women that are stepping forward to be a part of the Lloydminster Youth Council. If you haven't seen them out in the community, you've missed out, and you will see these people, I guarantee it. They're going to be out and about everywhere. So congratulations to them. I said it in the letter I sent. Congratulations to their families for standing by them, because it takes more than just themselves doing it. They need that support too. So it's a really positive and encouraging thing to see those groups come together like that. So congratulations.
Thanks, Councilor, for that one. Anyone else? Not seeing any, I'll ask the question, is there any other matters that this council needs to deal with at this time? Not seeing any, I will look for inquiries from the media.
Your Worship, today we have a request from the media for yourself, Mayor Albers, Councillor Thorson, and Councillor Diachuk.
Thank you very much. I'll look for a motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
Or, before I take that motion, is there requirements for?
Yes.
There is, okay. I'll accept that motion for recess. Seconder, Councillor Beckman. All in favor? Slowest carried.